Maybe you've had this kind of morning. You wake up early, you get the workout in, you eat a good breakfast, and maybe you even read, pray, journal, study scripture, or do whatever your version of starting the day right looks like. And for a little while, it works. You feel clear, you feel proud of yourself, you feel like today has a real chance of being different because you actually started the day the way you said you wanted to. Then you sit down at your desk, open up your laptop, and look at what's in front of you. And all of a sudden, the day changes shape because it's not just that there's a lot of things to do. It's actually that so many of these things feel like they have to be done really well and that they need to be done ASAP. Building and growing your own business isn't just checking boxes. The sales call, the content, the client work, the proposal, the launch, the project that you've been putting off, whatever it is for you, it doesn't feel like it can just get done. It feels like it has to work. It all needs to be a success, which means you have to be on your A game all the time. And that's the part that makes entrepreneurship feel different because the success of the business doesn't feel separate from how well you can show up for the important things in front of you. It feels like the business needs your judgment, your creativity, your confidence, your strategy, and your ability to make good decisions under pressure. Your business doesn't just need your time. And every day it feels like your business, your brainchild, needs the version of you that the stress of running your business has been pulling you away from. That's where a lot of people start to feel trapped, even though they started this whole thing so they could have more personal freedom. Because from the outside, entrepreneurship gets sold as freedom. You control your schedule, you choose your clients, and you do the work that you care about. And that's all possible because you're not trapped inside of someone else's system. But then you just get trapped inside your own system. And from my personal experience, that sometimes feels worse. You get inside the actual experience of building the thing. And then you realize that there's no easy clock out. There's no obvious finish line. There's always something that could be improved upon, posted, refined, learned, fixed, or even rebuilt. One of the strange things about running a business is that you're never really done. It's not like there's a clear moment when you get to say, okay, I finished the business today. You could work until 3 a.m. and still not be done. I had my own version of this moment a few years ago. My girlfriend and I were trying to make some plans for a fun Friday night after a couple long weeks of work. She said, "My day's flexible, so let's plan around your work schedule. When will you be done?" And still half in zombie mode from creating a multi-part sales funnel, I responded, "I'm never done. I could work for the next 72 hours straight and not be finished with everything." That's when it hit me. And I realized I needed to change something. So in a weird way, the question becomes less, when is the work finished? And more, at what point am I going to make myself stop? And when there is no clear endpoint, it gets hard to feel progress. In a normal project, you might be able to say, okay, I went from 5% done to 10% done. But with a business, sometimes it just feels like there's an unknown amount left. You could put in 10 hours, 12 hours, even 20 hours and still feel like you're standing in front of the same mountain. That's exhausting in a really specific way. Not just because there's a lot to do, but because the work keeps expanding. The endpoint keeps moving. The important things in front of you seem to require your A game at the exact moment you're starting to feel the least able to access it. And if you're the face of the business, that adds another layer. You can't just have a bad hair day. You can't just be off. You cannot be halfway present if the thing in front of you requires you to be visible, clear, confident, articulate, and camera ready or meeting ready. Even normal human things start to feel like part of the job. So you sit there at the desk after the good morning, after doing the things you were supposed to do, and instead of your optimized morning routine carrying you into the day, the pressure of the day starts taking over. You get tense, your mind starts moving quickly, and not in a way that helps you think more clearly. Instead of staying with the task in front of you, your brain starts building out the whole consequence tree. If this lead doesn't convert to a sale, I'll come up short this month. If this month doesn't work, maybe my business isn't actually viable. If my business isn't viable, maybe I have to get another job, explain it to my spouse, or face the people who already wondered if I could pull this off in the first place. And even if your version of the fear is not that dramatic, the pattern is usually similar. Your mind leaves your work and starts preemptively stressing about the future. What if this doesn't work? What if I'm behind? What if I'm not doing enough? What if I'm not as capable as I thought? And before you've really started working, the businesses has already taken you somewhere internally. The business may not physically trap you. You may technically be free to choose your hours, choose your offers, choose your clients, choose where you work, and choose what you build. But internally, it can start to feel like the business has more control over your internal state than you do. Your calendar dictates your emotional state. Your current leads shape your perspective of the future. Your social media and ad performance determines your confidence in your company's viability. Even a single number on a report can take over your mood and emotions faster than you expected. And that's when freedom starts to feel confusing, because on paper, you may have more freedom than you're used to. You're not asking a boss for permission. You're not stuck in a job you hate, and you may genuinely be doing work that matters to you. But internally, you don't feel free. You feel behind and stressed. You feel it because there is no obvious finish line. The work keeps expanding, and every important task seems to require the version of you that the stress is already pulling you away from. And the hardest part is not just the hardest part is what the workload starts to mean to you in your mind. Because when you're the one driving the business, the way you show up doesn't feel separate from the way the business performs. If you're struggling, the business feels like it's struggling. If you're not focused, the business feels less stable. If you're not productive, the business feels like it's losing momentum. And if the business fails, it feels like you failed. That's why for an entrepreneur, a bad workday doesn't just feel like a bad workday. It feels like evidence. If you didn't get enough done today, maybe you're not disciplined enough. If the launch didn't work, maybe you're not good enough at this. If you can't keep up with the pace, maybe you're not capable of building the business you said you wanted. That's why this feels different from a normal job. In a normal job, you can have a bad day and still clock out. It may not feel good. There may still be some consequences, but the whole business usually does not feel like it's sitting on your shoulders. But when it's your business, your name, your offer, your money, your family, your dream, your future, this work becomes personal really quick. And you're not just trying to finish tasks. You're trying to prove to yourself that you can actually do this, that you can keep going, and that you can live up to that standard required for the success of your dream. And that's where the freedom starts to disappear. A lot of people think the issue is the task list. And sometimes the external things really do need attention. The list may be big, the schedule may be unrealistic, and the strategy may need to be simplified, or the business may be spread across too many priorities at once. I'm not saying that those things don't matter, because they do. But there's another layer underneath that, because two entrepreneurs can look at a similar day and have completely different internal experiences. One person sees a packed schedule and starts figuring out the most effective strategy to tackle the day. Another person sees that same kind of schedule and feels like they are already failing before the work has even started. One person sees a sales lead who probably won't buy and asks, how can I serve this person well? What can I learn here? Is there another way this relationship could still be useful? And another person sees that same lead and immediately starts thinking, if this deal doesn't close, I'm in trouble. Maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe this whole thing isn't working. The circumstances may look similar, but the internal state is very different. The interpretation is different, so what they do next is also different. That's why this isn't just a productivity problem. It is not a scheduling problem, and it's not even a discipline problem. The deeper issue is that the pressure of the business changes what mental and emotional states you experience. When you're clear, grounded, and connected to yourself, the work can still be demanding. It may require effort, stretch you, and ask a lot from you, but you can still think clearly enough to prioritize, to choose the right actions, to create, to decide, and take the next best course of action. But when the pressure pulls you into confined mental state, the same business scenario starts to look completely different. The task feels bigger than it is. A lead feels more threatening than it needs to be. A schedule feels impossible before you even start the day. Content idea that might have been useful starts sounding stupid, and an unfinished project starts feeling like proof that you're behind. The same business that used to feel exciting starts to feel like something you just have to survive. And then you start doing the things that make sense from that stressed out and confined mental state. You avoid the work that matters the most, and you do just enough of the smaller things to feel like you're not completely wasting the day. You check messages, you tweak things that were already good enough, or maybe you get another coffee because it gives you one small place where you still feel like you have a choice. From the outside, it looks and feels like procrastination. But actually, it's likely you're trying to get relief from the pressure of the work without fully abandoning the work. And that's an important distinction, because if you call it laziness, then the only solution is to shame yourself harder. If you call it a discipline problem, then the only solution is to force yourself harder. If you call it a strategy problem, then the only solution is to go find a more foolproof strategy. But what if the behavior isn't the first problem? What if the behavior is what happens after the pressure has already shifted your state, narrowed your focus, and changed what the work means? That's a very different problem. Because the question isn't just, how do I get myself to work hard? It's what's happening inside of me when I sit down and see everything that the business needs from me. That's where the pattern starts. It starts before the procrastination, before the avoidance, and before the strategy hopping, and before the end of the day shame. It starts in the moment where your focus goes to everything that could go wrong. Your interpretation becomes, this proves I'm not where I should be, and your actions become shaped by fear instead of desire. And this isn't about pretending the pressure isn't real. Sometimes the stakes are actually really high. The business does need to work. Bills still need to be paid. Your sales call later today still matters. You definitely need to implement that new strategy more effectively. When you run your own business, the next few decisions might actually make a huge difference. So the answer isn't to just ignore reality. The question is whether your focus is going towards what you can actually do next, or whether it's getting drained into everything that could go wrong if you don't do it perfectly. Because that's where so much energy gets lost. Not in the work itself, but in the meaning and the fears and the worries around your work. You're trying to write the email, but part of your mind is asking what it means about you if nobody responds. You're trying to make the content, but part of your mind is already measuring how embarrassing it would feel if it doesn't click with anyone. You're trying to plan your day, but part of your mind is using your unfinished work as evidence that you're not where you should be. So the work isn't just work, it's a test of whether you're disciplined enough, far enough along, or good enough to make this thing work. And once your work becomes all of that, it makes sense that you would want relief from it. That doesn't mean the avoidance is actually helping you, nor that the busy work is the right move. It also doesn't mean that you should stay stuck in that pattern, but it does mean the problem is deeper than just, I need to try harder. Because if the business makes you switch into the version of yourself who's tense, avoidant, ashamed, reactive, or constantly behind, then more success by itself may not solve the problem. More success may even just give that stressed version of you more weight to carry. That doesn't mean you're broken. It definitely doesn't mean you're not capable. It means that there's an internal pattern being exposed by the pressure of what you're building with your business. And once you can see that, the whole problem changes. Because now you're not just asking, how do I force myself to work harder? You're asking better questions. How do I lead this business without letting the business decide my state? How do I make decisions without turning every result into identity feedback? How do I take action without needing shame, fear, or urgency to push me? How do I build something meaningful without losing the person I wanted this business to help me become? This is the real conversation, because the goal was never to just build a business. The goal was to build a life you could actually feel free inside of. And if the thing you built for the freedom is starting to make you feel trapped, the solution probably is not just add more of that thing, more pressure, more shame, or more force. Which brings up the next question. Why does the first solution most entrepreneurs reach for usually fail? Why doesn't more discipline fix this? This is usually where people go first. I just need to be more disciplined. I need a better morning routine. I need to stop being lazy. I need to force myself to follow through. But what if discipline isn't the first layer? What if discipline is downstream from what you're focused on, what you're making it mean, and who you believe you are while you're doing your work? That's what this next video is about. So watch this video that's showing up on your screen next, because if you've been trying to discipline your way out of this trapped, behind, never done feeling, that may be one of the reasons this pattern keeps coming back.